Hello, how are you?
I'm great. It's great talking to you. You doing okay on this Thursday?
Yes, I'm doing great. I'm gonna head out to a show that's like to raise money for the LA fires, the victims,
Oh,
obviously.
you're doing something much more productive than I am after this. I'm just finishing dinner off. I was actually a little bit nervous that the meat thermometer was going to ring in the middle of our conversation. I was going to have to hit pause, but the
What
meat
are you having?
to temperature, so we're okay. We're having tomahawk pork chops tonight.
Oh my God.
It's delicious.
Tomahawk pork chops. I
Yeah.
didn't even know there was such a thing.
It is the perfect combination of pork flesh and pork fat because too much of one or the other, I feel like the pork is not as good, but that strikes the right balance in my opinion.
So how are you cooking it in the oven?
Yeah, there's a method called reverse searing. Are you familiar with it?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I have TikTok like everybody else.
I don't have TikTok, but I read a book a couple of years ago, and I had never cooked steaks or pork chops prior to 4 or 5 years ago. But I read this book, and it's like this is basically the idiot-proof method to cook meat really well. And sure enough, I cook steaks and pork chops like a pro now. So
Right. You feel good about it, don't you?
I feel better. Yeah, it's like one of the few moments that both of my kids like me in unison. Usually, one or the other does, while the other one hates me.
Oh shit. How old are they?
They are 10 and 8. You have a daughter, is that right? One daughter?
I have one 17-year-old daughter.
Oh
Yes.
boy. How was 17? I'm a few years away from the teenage years.
It's what people say it is. But she's great. She's amazing. She just hates me. That's all. But otherwise, she's very smart, very cool, very funny, has a lot of friends. She's
Yeah, I
doing
would
well.
imagine with two funny parents, she's not going to help but to really understand sarcasm and probably be an old soul in that regard too.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was thinking about this. It's like, the reason that kids do well in certain fields is because that's what the parents, reward. And I remember when she was little, the minute she did something funny, we would both stop and just be like, do it again, do it again. You know what I mean? And so there was no chance that she wasn't going to be funny. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like she does something math related. We're like, yeah, whatever. Oh, who cares? She told us that she was going to go to med school, and I was like, "You don't want to do that. That's so much work," and whatever. And then she goes, "That's what Daddy said." And she goes, "Jesus, like the only people on the planet who don't want their kid to be a doctor are comedians."
Yeah, usually it's the other way around. Usually the parents are trying to talk their kids into law school or medical school,
Right?
right?
And I'm like, "No, you gotta do something." My theory is that you got to do something that that you're going to love every day. I mean, I just can't imagine this life doing something that you hated. I mean, doing something you love every day is hard as well. So doing something you hated would be just terrible.
Yeah, and people validate it because they may make a little bit more money in the short term or even long term. But if that is
Right.
what you're chasing at the end of the day, you're going to be pretty unfulfilled unless you can find that some other purpose to help fill that free time that you have. But if you're working a job that pays that well, your free time is probably going to be pretty limited for a decade plus.
Yeah.
But
I don't
you're also somebody who is squarely in the category of pursuing your dream. You grow up on a farm in Canada. You've told the story plenty of times. I'm not going to ask you to retell it, but you figured out pretty quickly that you needed to escape this small town. It's funny to talk to people that grew up in small towns that are clearly not cut out for that lifestyle. Like I talked with
know.
David
Yeah,
Kent.
no, it felt like I was like dropped in the wrong, like an alien dropped in the wrong spot. It's like, what are we doing? I remember when we didn't have TV for a long, long time growing up. And when we got a TV and we were all sitting around watching, I don't know what we were watching, but a commercial came on and I said to my mom, "How much do you have to pay to be on TV?" And my mom goes, "No, no, they pay you." And I was like, "What are we doing? Like, we're working our asses off on a farm when we could, like, it didn't make any sense to me that we would work this hard when that job was available. So then that just was what I was going to do.
Your mom should have said, just wait until the 2020s, then you do essentially have to pay to be on television.
Right, right, right.
Let me ask you this because I've got a complex relationship with my kids and technology and exposing them to too much technology or letting them watch too much television. Do you feel like getting little to no television up to a certain point served you well as an adult in terms of you not being attached to the television during most of your free time?
No, I don't know. I sometimes I think that. Sometimes I think, oh, I do think differently because I wasn't programmed as much as other people. Um, but I don't know because I have a weird thing about it. I just think like you're here on this planet. It's like, who are we to say how you spend your time? Do you know what I mean? Like, why is, you know, walking along the beach a better activity than like laughing and watching reels? I don't know. Maybe it is better. I don't know. But like even sometimes this is so crazy that I'm gonna say this out loud, but sometimes I think like I mean, if a heroin addict wants to spend all his time high, like I don't know, who's to say that's not like an okay way to like use your earth time? I don't know.
So generally speaking, I'm with you. The problem that comes into play is when somebody lets that activity cause them to be destructive or harmful
Right. Absolutely.
or detrimental to others, especially friends and loved ones. But
Right.
like generally speaking, if you're able to take care of your business, I don't really care what you do with your free time.
Right.
As long as you're
I'm
handling whatever those responsibilities are, family obligations, etc.
I do feel like this generation coming up and the next one are the thing that they're missing out on really is that like social interaction in real life. And I see it in the clubs more than I used to, where people will sit in the front row with their arms crossed like this, waiting. And sometimes you ask them, are you having fun? And they're like, oh, yeah, I love it. But they're just watching. They're not, it's like people used to come to comedy shows and there was like a little buzz, a little bit of energy before the comedian came on. Like they were excited, like they knew this was going to be a place where they laughed and had fun. And there's sort of a drug of everyone laughing at the same thing. And you didn't even have to agree with the comedian necessarily. You just were getting the drug of laughing in a group, you know? And I feel like they don't know how to do that, or that's not a natural response anymore. It's like laugh, wait, like weigh everything instead of just like, releasing yourself and just having fun. And, it doesn't have to, you don't have to agree with every single thing. Like you can just go with it. Who cares?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I actually, like you, identify as somebody who, generally speaking, is pretty socially awkward, but for whatever reason, those inhibitions go away when I'm in a comedy club because that natural camaraderie exists typically. Now,
Mhm.
there are some bomb sets or there are some sparse crowds where everybody's not necessarily laughing together. But if you're in a room full of people and the comedian knows what they're doing, at the end of the night, everybody's going to be walking out of there with a smile on their face.
Right. Right. I even think if the comedian doesn't know what they're doing, sometimes I'm watching somebody, I'm like laughing, and then people turn around and like, what are you laughing at? I'm like, well, I'm in a comedy club and there's someone on stage. Like, I don't know. I guess I feel like it's 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 more fun to have fun, like than to just wait and make sure that it's actually something you really love and enjoy. Like a movie's different to me. Like a movie I will sort of judge. But
Well, I'm also a little bit of an overlapper when it comes to comedy shows. Like sometimes I will reward
me
the
too.
comedian, even if I don't think it's like ha 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 funny. I will still give a little bit of a verbal laugh to acknowledge the effort that was there and to say, yeah, there's something interesting here. But I've also sat next to the person who is treating the comedy show like Mystery Science Theater 3000, where they're like just talking up a storm or agreeing or trying to add their own commentary to
Well, I think that's
comic's
another thing that
punchline, the setup, and then they're not laughing at the punchline. It's like, what are you doing here? You're confused about what this process is supposed to be.
I think people are confused. I think people don't know. I think maybe I don't know what it is, but I do notice that more than ever in recent, like in the last couple of years, where people are just, they don't mean to be disruptive, but they're just talking along. They can't stop themselves. They're just like, oh, yes. Oh, goes there. Yes. Oh, I have that or whatever. They're just like, you're like, all right, all right. I don't know what that is. What is that?
I don't know. Is it the same thing that has so many people just yelling things out during comedy shows because they've seen too many Instagram or TikTok clips of comedians having their back and forth with the audience, so they
Yeah,
buy the
I've not
ticket
noticed
pieces
that
for the
part.
part of the show?
I don't think I get people talking, but I really don't get the hecklers in that sense. I don't feel like people are trying to be mean. To me, at least, they're
It's not a
not.
mean thing, but it's like it's a participation thing. It's like they think that the
Yes,
show is a
yes,
little bit of a Mad Lib, and it's like, hold on, you still need to be quiet and let this person
right,
show you
right.
what they've been working on for however long. And once they address you, then it becomes a little bit more of an open game situation. But I would also suggest anybody who's going to see you at the Comedy Mothership this weekend, well, I might like to see that if I were in the crowd, because I know just how good you are in that roast setting. So I assume
I
that.
don't mind. I don't mind people talking at all. I like it. And again, I do have this thing where it's like, well, if that's how you want to spend the hour with me, then I guess I'll do it. Like, I don't have a preconceived idea necessarily of how this was supposed to go. It's like, we have an hour together, let's have fun.
Your memoir, You're Better Than Me, was interesting for so many different reasons, but reading about your struggle as a comic was a fascinating one. Was there a point where you felt like you really got comfortable in having that back and forth with the audience, Bonnie?
Yeah, yeah, it took a lot of work. It really did
Yeah.
because I started going on the road with Rich, and he was very good at crowd work. And I, at that time, was, sort of like a late night comic, I guess you could describe me that way. I had my set of jokes that I would do. I was used to, doing stand up in Los Angeles, which is, pretty a respectful place to do stand up. And Rich told me pretty early on, he was like, you're gonna, people would heckle or say something, and I would just keep going. I wouldn't address it, or I'd say, I'm not that kind of comedian, or I wouldn't deal with it. And then he said, you have to learn how to do it. It's just a skill that will help you in any situation, And and he's right, because if you're in a room where they don't like your material, now you can do more crowd work, and it can get you out of a lot of problems. It can make you can get out of a bomb if you can do crowd work pretty well. And so I just started forcing myself to go into the audience at least once a show,
Hmm.
and then if I encountered something that I felt could have gone better, I would think about it later that night and write. If I encountered a fireman and we had an exchange where it wasn't very funny, I would think of something that would have been funny in that situation, and then if it came up again, I had something in my pocket, and so that's how I learned to do crowd work. And then at some point, you just stop caring at all if people like you or not, so it's much easier.
It becomes muscle memory also, right?
Yeah, there's lots of times where I'm doing crowd work where I'm as surprised as anyone what's going on. Like I'm watching it just like everybody else. Like I don't know. I'm not thinking about what I'm saying, I'm just doing it. And sometimes I'm pretty impressed with myself. I gotta be honest. I'm like, wow, that's pretty good.
I think it was Steve Byrne that I was speaking with about a year ago because he is really good at crowd work as well. I'd asked him something about doing roast battles, and he said that those are actually two different parts of the comedic brain. You've gotten good at crowd work. You're really good at roast battles. It's why Anthony Bourdain wanted to help you publish that memoir back in 2016. Do you agree with
Hmm.
that those are two different parts of the brain, roasting and then also doing crowd work?
For me, it really is. I think maybe not for everyone, but roasting, I really have to think about and write.
Hmm.
If I'm gonna do a roast battle or something like that. I have to like I can't just do it in I can't just come up with I'm not the person that's gonna just look at you and come up with a funny roast joke. I also think that's just a skill that people develop. I'm sure back when I was doing a lot more roasts, I was better at it. And then I haven't written a roast since, I don't know, whatever, Alec Baldwin. That was the last roast that I wrote on.
So that's just a
So
matter.
I'm not doing it all the time. I'm not, and I'm not like roasting the audience really when I'm having crowd work. Honestly, they're roasting themselves most of the time, and I'm just like, I just at this point know kind of what questions to ask to get them to the thing. But sometimes it feels like I'm not really doing all that much work. It's the person that's talking in the audience is like enjoying it and laughing.
You're a really good writer, as this memoir proves. Anthony Bourdain was a really good writer as well. He obviously became known for food. Confidential, one of my all-time favorite books. You have a favorite meal that you shared with Bourdain as you were going through the book writing process?
No, because I'm plant-based,
Mm.
vegan. Although I read nobody's really vegan because you just can't keep it out of your system. But
Well, plants feel pain too, so that's
I know they do. I think about that too. So funny. But I gotta eat something. But yeah, no, he was kind of anti-vegan.
yeah.
And so I kept it a secret for as long as I could. And I didn't, but I wrote his stage shows,
Oh,
and
really?
yes, yes. And so he would go on these huge multi-city tours and,
Oh, I
um,
saw him in Austin. It was a hilarious show, so kudos on that.
oh, thank you. I never saw, I don't know what he did. I would just write and write and write, and he would say more of this or more of that, and I would just keep writing and sending and writing and sending. And he yeah, I mean I didn't really know anything about food. I just would research and write jokes.
As we talked about earlier, you grew up on a farm in Canada, and you write in great detail about being the one of four sisters who actually had the guts, no pun intended, to behead the chickens that needed to be slaughtered.
Yeah.
Is killing chickens like riding a bike? If you were to be asked to kill a chicken tomorrow, let's say, would you be able to do it pretty easily?
I could do it. I'd be capable of doing it. I know exactly how to do it. I wouldn't want to do it. I mean, it's so weird because for a long time people would say, "Well, that's why you're vegan because you had to kill animals," and I'd be like, "No, no, it's not." But now I think that it might be. I don't know. Because I honestly, I don't hate people who eat meat. I just personally have never really liked, even when I was younger, when I was living on the farm, I remember saying to my parents, like, isn't it weird that people still eat meat, that we haven't evolved beyond that? And my parents got so mad at me. They were like furious because, it's how they made a large part of their living. But
Well,
I was,
when you gain a pet cow at the age of 10 and that cow immediately has a calf, like
yeah,
you're personalizing that experience. So it becomes
yes,
more difficult for the prospect of eventually slaughtering each
yes.
of those animals and eating them.
Yes. But I have a respect for people who do kill their own food. Like they're
Yeah.
people who hunt and stuff and then they eat it. I think that's more noble and moral than people who just go to the grocery store and grab things. They're not connecting it in any way. Do you know what I mean? It's like those people that are eating chicken would be like, how can people hunt? You're like, what are you talking about? It's insane. That's an insane way to think to
Yeah.
me. I mean, I don't get why people hunt just like rhinos or whatever. That's not, although there's this whole weird industry. I can't believe I'm talking so in depth with you. Thank you for listening. No one listens to me. This is not what my show is going to be about. But it is crazy to me that like, I mean, you know, there's so much more to all that stuff than anyone really knows. It's like they're getting rid of old rhinos, or sometimes they're like they're fixing a problem by like killing an old rhino or whatever. Anyway,
You mean
I'm
grinding up
sorry.
you
Cut
mean
that part out.
You mean grinding up the horn for erectile dysfunction medication?
No, no, not that stuff. That's like I don't like the, sort of evil uses of animals, but like I did I can't remember if I read an article or watched a documentary about it, but they were like, these big game hunters are vilified, but the truth is that they sometimes want them to come in to kill an animal that is like gone rogue, or they're protecting the rest of the herd or whatever it is, and we just don't know about it. We just go, oh, these people are fucking horrible.
Yeah,
Meanwhile,
there's a population of deer, I think, in Hawaii that are overrunning one of the islands, maybe. And so they're literally having to go in and kill these deer to save other species on the island. And the deer are
right,
also a great source of meat. Like it's I guess, a delicious meat, and it's a nutritional meat source as well. And so that is falls along the lines of that morality. I feel bad sometimes because I've never taught either of my kids to hunt, in the sense that I don't know if they have complete respect for what it is that they're consuming. Like when they were young,
yes,
my wife got
right,
upset with me over this, but when my kids were like 3, 4, 5 years old, they're like, Dad, where does a chicken come? Like, how did the chicken get here to where it's on our plate that we're eating right now? I'm like, do you really want to see this? You want to see what happened to the chicken to where it eventually got to this plate? And they're like, yeah. And so I showed them. And I guess there's a humane way of killing chickens where you drop their head down in this funnel and the neck gets slit and the blood is let. And my kids
right.
watched it, and I'm like, God, I hope I'm not screwing them up right now. But they watched it and they're like, oh, that's interesting. That's where a chicken comes from. So
No,
even
I
though they're
think
young,
you should. I think it's
yeah.
like, and it's like, I don't know.
Well, my
I think that
rationalization is that there's kids on farms who see this all the time, and only like 10% of them grow up to be serial killers.
I know I'm one of them.
Yeah, but
No,
you
I've
avoided
only killed
serial killer status. You found one of the few professions that a serial killer can be good at, other than
right,
murder.
right. Um, no, when we were growing up, we had so many it was just a constant thing, like the cycle of life, like because it was just like, you know, hammered into us. So yeah, my sisters eat meat like crazy. So it didn't
Oh,
bother them.
really? Hmm.
Mhm.
So I like
Yeah.
asking my guests this, who are parents. Maybe I should start asking those guests who are planning on dying alone. But I like asking parents this question because it's a fascinating one. I love parenthood. So many joys. There's a lot of frustrations as well, of course, but that's with
Right.
anything in life. What do you think the biggest challenge is for parents in 2024, considering that you've got a 17-year-old daughter, Bonnie?
Oh God. That is a very good question. And I just it's weird. I don't know if I got lucky with my kid. Like I don't know. Like people say, well, you're a good mom, but I don't know. I think it's that I think I did just get a good one because she's very good at school. She's very conscientious. She's, like I said, she's funny. She hates me, but that'll go away. We used to be best friends. But no, I think like I just didn't have any rules really growing like for her. I just liked hanging out with her and I liked being with her, and I just honestly sort of believe that that's what kids want. They want you to light up when they walk in a room, and they want to know that there's people that care about them in a deep way. And sometimes I think parents get really caught up in like the rules and the bedtimes and all that stuff. And it's really like sometimes I don't even know if it's my job to teach her how to live, because do you know what I mean? Like I used to think like, oh, I'm supposed to get her ready for the real world, but it's like, well, I don't really know what that real world is going to look like in 10 years. You know what I mean? It's like, so I don't know. I guess I'm a bad person to ask because I really just sort of like I just kind of let it happen, and it's been working out really well. So just kind of like try to support her in whatever she wants to do.
Well, there's a balance to be struck there, right? Because it's important that they experience the world on their own, in a sense, but
Mhm.
you also do need to set some parameters. Like if your kid came home at the age of 10 and wanted to, let's go back to the heroin example. They wanted to do heroin. You'd be like, I don't know if we're going to do that today. I don't know if we're going to go visit a street corner and get you some heroin.
Well, that's like the drinking and the drugs and stuff is very difficult because like they're gonna they're testing the waters. I don't know where they're doing it. Do you know what I mean? It's you don't want to completely pretend that it's not happening, but I don't want to like say it's okay either. Do you know what I mean? But then you're like, no one's drinking when they're driving, are they? You're always like having these conversations about it. I don't know.
Well, you want to encourage them not to do hard drugs. You want to encourage them to do hard stuff too, because that creates a sort of grit and resilience. It's like you do
Right.
something hard naturally. And this is for adults as well, obviously. You're not going to start out good at something, but if it's something that you enjoy doing enough, you put the work into where you do start getting better and there is an eventual payoff. And I think
Right.
sports is
Right.
probably the easy example to point to where it's like every kid
Right.
starts out not being very good at sports, and some kids are bigger than others. Some are the smallest kid on the field. But at the end of the day, if you put even a little bit of effort in, you will see improvement over the course of those 2 to 3 months of a season.
I honestly think that's the number one lesson to teach kids is that you're not going to be good at something when you start. You have to put in effort and then it pays off because, like you said, that's everything in life.
Mm.
And especially when you get older, people stop trying new things. They got enough stuff. They've done it enough things. So nobody tries anything new anymore. I mean, that's why people get angry about new stuff coming because they're like, I just don't want to learn anything new anymore.
Yeah, no, awe is a an underrated emotion. Kids are really good at it. Like my kids, when they were really young, they were awed by the button that you would press to open a door. And they used to fight over who got to push that button. And as they grew up, they grew out of that, but there's other things that still awe them. But as adults, whether it's the grind of the workday or whatever else, we stop seeking those things out. We stop exiting those comfort zones. But it's maybe as important as ever to still feel that awe. What's the last thing that awed you, Bonnie?
What is the last thing that awed me? Like something that I did for myself, maybe?
Or just something about this world that blew you away?
Oh God, things blow me away all the time. I can't believe how smart people are. Like I know like people are dumb, but I'm I'm one of them.
Nope.
But people
False.
know so many like sometimes when I'm talking to people in the audience and they know like you can tell English is their second language. And if I ask them how many languages do you know, sometimes they know four languages and then they're here on a work visa to like something like, insanely they're engineering something that I can't understand. It's like how it's crazy to me. Like I literally, sometimes I go, I know nothing. How is it that these people they know how to play like seven instruments and you know, I really think it's incredible that people can do stuff.
I'm jealous of somebody who can even play one instrument mediocrely because that's way better than I can do.
Right, right. I know, but that's the thing is like at some point in their lives they decided to try to play the guitar or whatever and they did it. It's like you said, it's like it's hard to learn something and these people have learned so many things.
Mhm. You referenced him a little bit earlier, but for those who are unaware, you are married to Rich Voss, legends, one of my
Yeah.
favorites. What makes Rich so legendary, Bonnie?
Well, he's very, very funny, incredibly funny. I don't think we'd still be married if he wasn't as funny as he is. We've had a lot of challenges. Um, but it's wild how often he makes me laugh. I'll tell you a quick story. So he didn't know I was home and there was an electrician here and so he just thinks he's by himself with the electrician. And the electrician yells up the stairs to him and goes, Hey, can I ask you a question? And Rich yells back down, I'm married. And it was so funny because he was just doing it for himself. He didn't know that I could hear him. And then the electrician didn't laugh or anything. He just goes, Oh, no, that's not what I was going to ask you. And I remember thinking like, oh, he's still funny even when I'm not around,
That
or when he thinks
electrician may not have grown up with funny parents.
I'm not around. That electrician didn't. What was he thinking?
All right, last question now before you go to an LA fire benefit to help raise money
Mhm.
for victims of those that horrific event.
Yeah.
Stand up, you love stand up. What do you love about stand up comedy?
I just can't believe that when I was younger, I decided to do this. This is exactly what you're talking about, where it was really hard and yet I persevered. And I feel like, I mean, there's just no better job in the world now that I'm good at it, But it's just always a little different. It's so fun. You meet such fun people. I just have a really, really good time every single time, every single place. I used to get like upset if a show didn't go my way or something, but I don't have any of that anymore because I think I look around and I see other people and how hard they have to work, and I just feel like, oh God, like I got so lucky.
People have a great opportunity to see you here in Austin this weekend at one of the premier comedy clubs on the planet. It is the Comedy Mothership. Still a few tickets left for the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday shows. God bless you for doing a show during the Super Bowl on Sunday.
I didn't realize. I know nothing about anything, and I didn't realize until last week. I was like, "Oh shit!" But
That's all right.
if you don't like this, if you don't like football, come to my show.
Yeah, well, or if you do like football, it's probably not going to be a great game anyhow. She is Bonnie McFarlane. Check her out, comedymothership.com. Bonnie, this has been a real treat. Thank you so much for the time. Safe travels to and from Austin this weekend.
Thanks, Trey. I appreciate it. Talk to you soon.